with my partners at Edison, or I don't when we have our district PD day and we're at Lincoln and
talking to Dave,
and you're like, oh yeah, that's great, and then you get taught something else by somebody who came in.
Yeah, you get inspired to
you're like.
I love new teachers too, because they come in and they're
they got the technology down.
Yes.
They're like, well, all you have to do is just put it on here, and you're there. Now that I'm getting into my mid 40s, it's like technology has become like when they're like, well, just put it on here and then here and here. You're like, what did you say? I go home. I'm like, Isaiah, come here. How do you use Google Meets? Like it's like Meanwhile, they're coming in and they got like all their curriculum online, and you're like. Can you?
But they're using.
I started to turn into a kid. Can you just do it for me?
Yeah. No, it's like like Padlet and all these different apps and platforms, and it's a little intimidating sometimes.
Oh, it is. It is.
And but if it helps the kids, and so that's why I love like next year I'm gonna work with Donnie Dupree. And he's coming up to the 8th grade, and. Same thing, gonna steal whatever I can from him. Share also, everything that I've learned over the years, from you and from Quinn and Pete Baracus years before, and Nancy Atterbury.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like that's where like, and it's also weird, us like the change that happened from Shanice to Isaiah in that short time, right? Like Shanice was out in Amaloney for 2 years, and here comes Isaiah, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and you go from like Ray Southland, rest in peace, and then I come in with Corsetti, and then we're together and we're collaborating, and all of a sudden like they open up Edison, and then it's like, hey Petrosky, you're going to Edison, and I'm like, no, like, and then it's like, and then now even like that rapid change in like 7-8 years is like.
And then with COVID too, just throwing everything in disarray.
Yeah, so it's like it's just interesting how you keep that, like, how we keep going and how we provide like that but, ability.
It also shows like the need for equity too, because like we switched to virtual learning. Yeah, and some kids didn't even have internet at home.
Yeah,
and can you imagine?
Or not even that. Remember when they told us the kids have to see them? Yeah. And I remember saying, but I don't even want to show where I live. Yeah. And it's a decent place. Uh-huh. I could not imagine if you talk to my 6-year-old self, I wouldn't want to, like, in a, That's true. Very true. Yeah. I wouldn't have wanted my teacher seeing
that's like allowing someone in your house.
Yeah, and then like if you have crazy family or people are coming and going, or there's things
yelling.
There's yelling, or there's like, even if you have a 2-parent household, what if like the wife works 3rd shift and she needs her sleep, and then the husband works 1st shift and come home 2nd shift? Like, and you see like the dynamics of that, or like, remember like they were saying like there was all the news stories about like how a parent would like be in the shower and then get out and the kid's door would be open, and then like they'd like forget the towel and run and be butt naked, and then the teacher would be like, oh my God, like, it's like there's just so many moving parts, like. Or you got like kids would be embarrassed. I remember kids saying, but like, I got to watch my little brother or my little sister because my mom's going to work. So like, they're going to climb all over. They're going to want to see the who are you talking to? And they're going to press on all these buttons and stuff. Because their fear was like, these kids are going to be like playing PlayStation. Yeah, some kids are going to play PlayStation. Some kids are going to play Xbox. It's like freedom. Yeah. But some, for a lot of our kids, they need like, plus home is sacred. Like, I don't want everybody in my house. Very, like you have to work to get to my front door, right? Yeah. So it's like, and like you said, like, our district, people can then say whatever they want. Our district does a hell of a job with like technology, and then partnering with like, was it Cox and Frontier to make sure that like affordable internet services, and getting those boxes. Remember they had like they imported those like Wi-Fi, things where you can go in, but it was only for like school hours. But at least that kid could get on. Yeah, and it's like,
and that's equity right there.
Yeah, and it's like you're gonna be mad. You're going to be mad in your $400,000 house that a kid in the projects is getting,
some internet for, like school hours.
Yeah. Like, no, I should get free internet for school hours too. It's like, shut up. Like, listen, we grew up in Connecticut, and like, you're here now, and Connecticut is very, Connecticut isn't equitable. Like, you have people with a hell of a lot of money, and then you have a lot of people with nothing.
Well, it's funny. When I lived in New York, I never set foot in Connecticut. My whole mind's picture of Connecticut was from Who's the Boss.
Oh, yeah,
and so I thought Connecticut was just where all the rich people lived.
Yeah. I remember somebody said to me, like, "Oh, you're from Connecticut, you're rich." I'm like,
yeah.
Hell, I'm rich. Like, I wish.
They haven't seen Bridgeport.
Yeah, they haven't seen Harvard, New Haven.
Hartford and New Haven.
Yeah, they know Yale, but they don't know go 3 blocks left. Like, right. Like, but it's like, and even if you have what would be considered a lot, like if we lived in Texas making the money we make as teachers, we would be able to live a lot better. Mm-hmm. But in Connecticut, everything is
the cost
tax.
of living.
The cost of living is like third highest in the country. So we're making more money, but they're taking more. So it's like we're still like, you could be middle. Like, I was telling somebody the other day, you could, if you were a family of 4 or 5 and your total gross income was $200,000 a year as a family, you'd still be middle to class, to lower middle class, because it's like I thought I saw I talked about this on the last podcast with like raised kids and how much it would need. It's almost like $220,000 per kid to 18 in Connecticut, which means that conservatively each parent has to make between 50 and 70,000 if you have a 4 or 5, and each. So it's like, if you have, like, I'm a family of 5. Right, I can't buy a regular car if I want to go on vacation. I can't, buy a regular 3-bedroom house, with a 1.5 baths. You got to get 4 bedrooms, or you got to make sure you better be lucky and have like 2 of one. You can't have like a boy, girl, boy. Yeah. And that boy is 2, and your oldest is 18, and he's a boy, because they can't live in the same. So it's like there's inequity in that. So it's just kind of crazy how equity is, but. I want to get into some fun stuff. So, growing up, we had this conversation, and for people that are listening, they're not gonna understand this. So, I'm gonna try to walk through it. I thought it was the coolest thing. We were talking about comics, right? And you're talking about how, like, when you were young, because I always said, like, zombies, right? Zombies were like my favorite. Like, people like vampires are like werewolves. My thing was zombies. And I remember in the 80s, and I'm sure you know this because you grew up in New York, especially in Brooklyn. Like the crack epidemic, right? So I remember in Meriden, or you go to I'd go to like a basketball game in Hartford, or driving through to watch a baseball game in the Bronx, and you'd see like people walking around looking like zombies. And I remember us calling like crackhead zombies up until like the late 90s. We'd be like, look, he's zombified, like just out, or like the living dead. It's the living dead. The heroin addict's just like in the alley, and even in a small city like Meriden, you would see it. And you see the vials on the floor, and and you kind of knew, even when you were a young age, like you'd see like. Yeah, I
remember the playgrounds in New York just having all these colorful,
like the red and blue tops.
Yeah. And it was like, ooh, it's like,
and so I thought it was cool. We were talking one day about like comics and your group of friends, and you would play this game, and I was like, oh, that would be like a great movie, and. So share with them, like, well, when you'd be like, all right, we got to make it to this bus stop or make it to this.
So I think just as kids, we would look for an escape, and we would live in a fantasy world. And so my friends and I, we during our lunch break, we sneak out of the school playground, and the neighborhood became our playground, and I would always come up with these, I had to add a story to all our games. So it was basically just like tag in a way, but I needed a backstory. And so I remember we were saying, okay, and we had a big group of kids, and we're like, okay, this group of kids, you guys are the mutants, right? And you've just, you're sick with some virus or something or other, and it's threatening to basically overcome all of humankind. but we have a couple of humans left, and these humans have found the cure. But you have to get the cure to this location, and the location was, remember, if you run up Knickerbocker Avenue, it was like one of the Knickerbocker Avenue train station where the M train comes through. But we were like maybe like 2 train stations away, and this was junior high school 111 on Star Street, and we would have a bunch of the kids who were the mutants run off into the neighborhood, and it was their job to stop the humans from getting there. And so the humans, it was kind of like a pass the baton, but you had to keep. And I remember it was just one of my friends, he had like, I think an Atari 5200 cassette or break game, and he like, it wasn't working. So the didn't work. So that was the Nintendo, but he would just he broke it open, and the
little like chip thing,
thing inside the little board,
with
the circuitry. We were like, all right, this has all the information that we need to save mankind. And so, and we would just start chasing each other. We remember we got good like dodging traffic, and just adults looking at us like, what the heck these crazy kids are doing. But yeah, we just and we had a lot of like abandoned lots where buildings had just got torn down or burned down. We had Bushway had like a rash of apartment fires. I want to say, was it 70? The blackout of 78 was it? And just so we grew up in the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
And so so we like abandoned buildings and all of this, and so to this day, a lot of those kids that I used to play with, those are my best friends now. We reminisce about those magical times.
Well, it's funny because you shared with me about like the prostitutes took over like your clubhouse or whatever.
Oh,
like
yeah, and
like the crackheads
and for those of you that remember the Little Rascals, so I was a big still a big fan of Little Rascals, and we were kind of like the Little Rascals of the 80s.
Yeah.
And so we didn't realize that we were living in this, like dilapidated neighborhood. And we just, we grew up there, so it's all we knew. And we had the idea of building our own little hangout place. And, we took doors from abandoned buildings and planks of wood from wherever we could, car doors. It was just probably the ugliest thing that you'd ever seen. But for us, it was, our mansion,
But it's atypical. Listen, that would be atypical of like living in, a working class or like lower middle class neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Like when we grew up, we went from like pretty much not having anything to, I almost hit every realm up until middle class, right? Of like the working class to middle class, the lower middle class to middle class, and then kind of on the echelons of upper middle class, but never, never breaking. It's still paycheck to paycheck, but like just more, we can get more, we can do more, right? And I remember my father like building me I wanted a tree house, like clubhouse, right? And it was like, but he had to get wood from here, if somebody like cut their tree down, the neighbor cut their hey, can I get that? If somebody was throwing out planks, because he was going to go spend $800 at a lumber yard to make me a house. He would have done that with his own house, like he would have fixed his own house. So it was like one of those things where I think in every neighborhood you kind of just if it stood and you didn't fall through, you were good. So
we built it. We had like our we got the back seat of some car, and that's our couch and tables. We and one day we ran to our clubhouse, and there were people inside, and it's like, what the heck? And it was these crackheads. Unfortunately, they're at that point in their life that they were selling their bodies so that they can buy more crack.
Yeah.
And we were like, get out of there. And I remember one of my friends got a little too close, and he got his hair pulled, he got scratched and pounded on, and we were like, what? And we started throwing rocks at them, and we chased them away, and we were like, yay! And I think it was just like maybe a week later, and now the crackheads themselves were, I think they were shooting up inside there, and I remember we used fireworks to try to drive them off, and ended up burning our clubhouse. And fortunately no one died, but I think there was an abandoned warehouse right next door, and that caught fire too. But